Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Morgan Harper. I'm Director of Policy and Advocacy at the American Economic Liberties Project, and we focus on breaking up corporate concentration throughout the economy to support workers, small business owners, consumers, and our communities. And it's been increasingly clear over the last several years and decades that the concentration within the credit card payment systems market is hurting consumers and small businesses acutely. Just a quick few stats on that. These swipe fees to process credit card transactions are costing businesses over $161 billion a year. And estimates are that American families are paying more than $1,000 a year in fees as a result of these costs being passed on to consumers. And so the Credit Card Competition Act is so important because it would break up this duopoly that Visa and MasterCard have over credit card payment systems and insert more competition into the market to make sure that everyone has to play fairly. And we as small business owners and consumers are able to keep a larger slice of that economic pie. So I'm so excited that in partnership with Americans for Financial Reform and the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, we are hosting some of these business owners and consumer voices today for you all to hear directly about why the Credit Card Competition Act would benefit them. And without further ado, we'll just get right into it and hear from them. And we'll kick things off with that consumer perspective. Renita Marcelin, the Legislative and Advocacy Director at AFR, will kick off our remarks. Renita?
Thank you, Morgan, for that introduction. Hi, yes, as Morgan said, I'm the Legislative and Advocacy Director for Americans with Financial Reform, an advocacy group that was pretty integral in passing Dodd-Frank along with the original 2010 Durbin Amendment that started, the journey to reform swipe fees, and it did so for debit cards. You know, One thing that it's becoming more and more part of the conversation is really how these swipe fees affect consumers. Banks are constantly looking for ways to really increase more hidden fees into consumer transactions, and this here is another example of in a long line of that history. Studies from the 2010 Durbin Amendment show that consumers saved almost $6 billion in the form of lower prices when the 2010 Durbin Amendment went into effect, and that amendment, to be clear, imposed a straight cap on debit card transactions. And because merchants were able to save and those savings were passed down to consumers, then saw that benefit. And it's important to note that the consumers we're talking about here, how much this is a cross subsidization, especially for the lowest, low income consumers that pay predominantly cash at the register. They do not have banking relationships. So, a lot of times you hear the industry touting that these fees goes towards paying for credit card rewards, right? If you're paying, it's not fair to you that you're paying cash and you're paying the same price as the people that are paying credit cards or debit cards. So you have to pay that same price, which has the embedded swipe fee in it. And then that additional payment that you paid is going towards, more higher income individuals to subsidize their credit rewards. So it's really a regressive fee in that manner. And, again, going back to the fact that banks are constantly doing this, there are arguments of, well, if consumers don't pay here, then we're just going to force them to pay somewhere else. Again, we could turn back to history. When the 2010 Durbin Amendment was going into effect, the banks cried and cried. One example that stands out is Bank of America tried to impose a $5 fee, monthly fee on checking accounts. That did not last long because, again, consumer groups and many of the groups on this call really push back and say, again, that's not fair. You can't just try to squeeze out consumers wherever you can. And, the administration has been going on against junk fees. And this is, I think one that's been under discussed is how much it is junk, because some of these fees, yes, they do go towards paying for fraud, prevention, and making sure that the networks are keeping up with, and the other participants in this call could discuss this in way more detail than I can. But the fact of the matter is, the cost of the service of providing the credit card, of making sure that, there are fraud prevention services that go along with it. The cost of this fee is surpasses that cost. And again, consumers are left holding the bag. So with that, I will turn it over back to Morgan, but really just want to emphasize AFR's undying support for this bill, and really want to show how this really ultimately hurts consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, Renita. And I do want to add, and it was in the advisory, that we partnered also with AFR on a letter that a lot of organizations, including some on this call, signed to Congress, encouraging them to hold a vote on this important piece of legislation. So thank you again for that, Renita. Next, we'll go to Chidi Kumar, who is chef of Aja in Raleigh, North Carolina, speaking on behalf of the Independent Restaurant Coalition.
Hi, thanks, Morgan. As you just said, I am the chef and owner of Aja, a new restaurant in Raleigh, North Carolina. And while we've only been open for a couple of months, I've operated and owned restaurants, bars, and music venues in this area for almost 20 years now. And, we've seen costs for our ingredients and labor go up dramatically over the last 3 years. And I think everybody knows that. But along with that, we've also seen a continual hike in credit card processing fees for independent restaurants and all consumers across the board. And an operator like me who sources locally and really is trying to pay our staff more than just living wages but thriving wages, and trying to reinvent our labor model where we share tips and don't pay people the sub minimum wage. We're now seeing that credit card processing fees are the number 3 cost on our profit and loss statement, behind cost of goods and labor. And, our profit margins in our industry are notoriously razor thin. So if we have a good year, we're looking at maybe 5 or 6% profit. And when, 2 to 3% of our top line goes to a credit card processing fee, for which we really don't see any benefit, it's a significant impact on our overall economic health. And as a new restaurant owner, I'm really trying to get us to a point where we can provide health insurance for our staff of 30. It's really expensive. And if I were able to reduce our credit card processing fees by 50% or even 30%, I think I would be able to provide that health insurance plan for our team. But as it stands right now, we don't have any options. MasterCard and Visa hold such a monopoly over, this industry, and we kind of have no options and no choice. So, what we're asking for as the Independent Restaurant Coalition is, the hundreds of thousands of independent restaurants across the country really need Congress to put this to a vote and, dispel some of the myths that are being disseminated by the credit card and banking industry that, your rewards will be affected or security will be compromised. If the Credit Card Competition Act were passed, we would keep more than $400 million in the North Carolina economy alone. And just think about that. That's just from the independent restaurant sector. So, for an industry like ours, where we have to think very hard before we raise a menu item by $1 or $2, sometimes we're forced to do that because of cost of goods, but we can't really pass these fees on to the consumers. It'll actually hurt our business, and I think we'll get a lot of pushback. I think everybody here goes to restaurants, and if you were starting to see 3% for credit card processing fees, menu items going up, every other month or so, I think you would think twice before you support a restaurant that you might even actually love. But, it's just, it doesn't seem fair that banks are, raking in record profits, billions of dollars in profits, and yet we have no options on our side. And cash usage has gone down so drastically, especially in the last 3 years. So not only are we getting more transactions on credit cards, we're paying fees on that, and we pay fees on the tips that are left by our guests that go 100% to our staff. So there just feels like there's no recourse. So we are imploring Congress to vote on this bill and pass the Credit Card Competition Act. I will take it back to you, Morgan. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, I just think hearing that that's your third highest cost after labor and cost of goods are these junk fees, which, like Renita said, usually we're hearing that term in association with consumer fees, rightly so, but these are the business equivalent of junk fees, really no upside for you and a lot of costs. And so thank you.
More than operating costs, more than occupancy costs, everything is number 3. It's crazy.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next we're going to go to Hamdi Shalabi, who operates 8 grocery stores in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Hopefully everyone knows Dallas-Fort Worth is in Texas, but I'll clarify that just to be sure, representing the National Grocers Association. Hamdi?
Thanks, Morgan, appreciate it. And thanks to Mrs. Kumar about the insight she gave us there in North Carolina. I'm Hamdi Shalabi. I'm the president and CEO of a local company called El Rio Grande Latin Market based in Dallas. Most people don't know this, but when you fill up gas or when you grab something at a convenience store or when you shop for groceries in our stores or any other grocery store, you're paying what Morgan refers to as junk fee. That's probably very honest. But we call it secret tax here in our, in our side of the business. Visa and MasterCard are grabbing an average of 2.24% of every dollar every time you swipe your credit card. And that's not just a doing business cost, or at least it shouldn't be. Americans are paying more than 7 times what our European counterpart, grocery stores and other businesses. We're paying 7 times the maximum allowed swipe fees in Europe, which is maxed out at 0.3%. Do the math. And I want to reference something that both Morgan highlighted and our counsel earlier is even their cost of fraud and operating, our operating costs and fraud and the things that would be part of the business model for the credit card industry here shouldn't be that far off. It shouldn't be 7 times off of what our European counterparts have to deal with. So I think, in my personal opinion, I feel like we took capitalism to a whole nother level. And don't get me wrong, I'm in business, so I appreciate capitalism. It keeps me in business. On some premium cards, the credit card companies are grabbing a full 4%, more than 13 times what Europeans pay. For most merchants, swipe fees are the second highest cost of their labor. We heard my colleague in the restaurant industry saying it's our third. It is also our third highest cost. But we also accompany that with all the banking fees. If you were to tell, I'm second generation grocer, if you were to tell my dad and my uncles at the time that they will be paying to deposit cash or to get change from the banks, they would have laughed at me back then, but that's what we're doing nowadays. There is just a lot, on every opportunity, another fee. The extra cost, is just far too high for businesses to absorb. And so the cost ends up getting, part of the cost ends up going passed on to the consumer. In my company's case, we started out 19 years ago and currently have 10 full grocery stores with 1,200 plus team members. We operate in predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods and middle to lower income levels. Some of our locations are defined by the FDA as food deserts, and many of our team members are from these same communities in which we serve. So that's why I'm really passionate about this, because it affects my team members' life, directly. And so as a leader, I'm also obligated to voice that on their behalf. Our core customer, many of them are in jobs like construction, gardening, and etc. Hard, physically demanding jobs. to earn their incomes. So there's a lot of sweat that goes in that. Texans paying an average of above $1,000 a year per family on these swipe fees, this hidden tax that we mentioned earlier. And for my customers, that's a lot. Coupling this with what my previous colleague highlighted, coupling this with near record high inflation over the past few years, these families are forced to go into a whole new level of stretching their dollars and looking for a second and third jobs in some cases, which also means this is a sad side effect. It also means less family time. That's not good. That's not what I believe our country's morals should be supporting. Just for somebody to keep breaking their own record from the previous year. It's just a different bracket. I'm a businessman and I'm a big fan of capitalism. So don't let me convince you otherwise. But it's not capitalism when it's makes the rules to not free market. There's a lot of regulations that are put in my, as safe havens in my industry and other industries for it to continue to be a competitive market. Some of it is regulated by government, some of it is regulated by free market, but it's all working towards the benefit of the consumer. Why can we not hold Visa and MasterCard to the same standards that we are all held to? They don't have any laws limiting how much they can get away with charging. The Credit Card Competition Act would address both those issues. The bill could put $15 billion back into the pockets of Americans every year. That's a lot of help. That within itself is boosting the economy every day. And we're always trying to look for ways to boost the economy. You can tell how effective this legislation would be based on how hard the credit card companies are fighting and spreading disinformation, as you highlighted earlier, Morgan. They're fighting teeth and nails, and we're just going to do the same, if not harder, to advance this legislation and vote yes for it. Consumers will still get to use their favorite cards, and they'll still get their points. Even though, let me highlight that within the communities I serve, they probably work so hard, they don't even have time to enjoy whatever points. So it's, between quotations, that they're earning.
Right.
So I don't think that's a fair claim by our credit card companies.
Great.
Go ahead.
Well,
I'm sorry. Did you say
Oh,
something?
I didn't know if you were wrapping up, Hamdi, but
And keep in mind that most lower income families don't even get this privilege. As I said, all Americans deserve cash back on their credit cards, and the Credit Card Competition Act will do that without any hidden fees or I got yous. They just need to be straightforward and give the consumer that choice.
great. Thank you so much, Hamdi, for your remarks. And I think it is very important to emphasize that Credit Card Competition Act is pro-business, it's pro-consumer, it's pro-worker, it's pro-community. And, in running your business, 1,200 employees, you are really at the forefront of addressing your community's needs. So we appreciate that. And just calling out some of these myths. Yeah, I mean, the common argument both of you have touched on, that we have Credit Card Competition Act and rewards will go away. No, we won't have security in our credit card system. We have a really easy comparison. Europe seems like things are functioning with their rewards, and also they have, security in their transactions. So let's just get rid of and debunk that myth, and make sure that we're focused on really injecting competition. That's what this bill is about, and having a fair marketplace, having other credit card payment processors. So thank you, Hamdi, for that.
Thank you, and thank you for the push.
Next, we will go to Lisa Del Alba, who lives in Bethlehem, PA, and runs a few convenience stores there, Square One Markets, representing the National Association of Convenience Stores.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. So my name is Lisa Del Alba, and I operate 7 convenience stores in and around the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania area. Second generation family business. And boy, we've done a lot of work to keep that business alive and well. We have about 80 employees that are basically family to us. We're a family business. They are part of our family. They help us keep our doors open every day, serving our communities. And, you know, one of the things that I'm very passionate about as a business owner is really making sure that those families are thriving and that we are able to give them, you know, the opportunity to have the things they need and to put food on the table every day. That's really something that keeps me up at night. And, you know, I think the convenience store industry is probably one of the most competitive industries out there. You know, at many places we're operating across the street from somebody who's trying to steal the same customers that we have. And, you know, it's really our employees are really depending on us to make good and sound business decisions to keep our doors open and keep food on their table. When I think about the challenges of running several convenience stores, I think credit card fees are definitely on the top of the list of things that quite in fact infuriate me. And they are my second highest operating cost. And so what we pay our employees, obviously payroll is first, but credit card fees are more than my rent, my utilities, and it's not even just a small gap between them. You know, when you think about some of the things that we're running, refrigerators, coolers, dispensers, you know, so when you think about utilities and the utilities required to operate those things, when you think about credit card fees being higher than that, it's something that definitely keeps me up at night and causes me some anxiety. So we spent about $815,000 in credit card fees. Huge hit for us as a small business. And that's about $100,000, excuse me, very passionate about this topic, $100,000 more than the previous year. And we see those fees increase. And it's not necessarily tied to volume. It's a little bit more about the high cost of fuel out there. And, you know, we're very competitive. You know, we have some folks that are really at our heels to take those customers away from us. And, you know, so we are very competitive when it comes to pricing our fuel. We put that price out there for everyone to see, you know, super competitive. There's no gray area with us. But when I think about the credit card companies, they don't compete. And, you know, Visa and MasterCard bring all the banks together. They tell them what they think the bank should charge small business, and that's it. So it just doesn't make sense to me. You know, are JP Morgan Chase and Citibank too helpless to set their own prices? You know, we need competition. We need competitive market dynamics in credit cards, and the Credit Card Competition Act would absolutely do that. You know, when I think about the small businesses that just spoke today, and many like mine, you know, even my son's karate school processes credit cards, and this hits their bottom line as well. We need Congress to make sure that there's basic rules, that there's competition out there, so that all businesses can thrive and put food on the table for their employees.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, more staggering stats that I'll just call out, that it's your second highest expense and spending over $800,000 a year in these expenses, and that it's increasing 100,000 from last year is pretty staggering. So thank you for sharing your experience. And I just, again, want to thank all of our small business owners, you know, for taking time out of your day and running your businesses to be with us today. Bringing
Morgan,
it home.
before you move on, can I add
Sure.
something to what Lisa had mentioned? So
Sure.
Texas being strategically, it's kind of like an inland port because of all the goods driving up from Mexico or from the Port of Houston. So there's a lot of 18-wheeler traffic going up and down the 35 corridor. We have now, I mean, you see it on the billboards of the prices. You have a cash price and a credit card price on billboards going up and down the freeway because of the impact it has on that local business.
Wow. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I you know, who would have thought we would live to see that?
I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that, Hamdi. And just to close us out with our speakers, well, before our official closing with Doug, Lauren Galatly from Institute for Local Self-Reliance and Small Business Rising Coalition, that's been leading a lot of the work on the Credit Card Competition Act. Lauren?
Thank you, Morgan. I'm Lauren Galatly with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. We are a national research and advocacy organization, and for 5 decades, we've advocated for strong communities. We're also a founding member of Small Business Rising, which is a coalition of independent business associations representing more than 300,000 small businesses across the United States. These businesses are a diverse mix of pharmacies, hardware stores, restaurants, toy stores, bookstores, florists, fishermen, sporting goods stores, office product suppliers, pet stores, grocers, and many more Main Street businesses. One issue brought us all together, advocating for policy to address corporate concentration and to urge our policymakers to level the playing field for small businesses. Monopoly power is the common thread threatening all the members of Small Business Rising. One of the most insidious forms of that monopoly power, as you've heard today, comes from credit card swipe fees. After payroll, swipe fees are often the biggest expense for most small businesses, as you've heard here. And American small businesses are paying swipe fees at a 7 times higher rate than in Europe. Markets, not individual firms, are supposed to set prices. But the markets for credit card swipe fees lacks competition, leaving most price-setting power in the hands of just 2 players, Visa and MasterCard. In a survey of our coalition partners this year, credit card swipe fees were the top issue of concern. With the Bipartisan Credit Card Competition Act, we have an opportunity to take a critical step in addressing this monopoly tax on small businesses and consumers. These dominant credit card companies are essentially operating as a 2 to 3% profit partner in every small business in the country. The workarounds available to small businesses, like giving a discount for cash transactions, are becoming increasingly untenable with the rising preference for cashless retail. This is not fair market competition, but we do have a chance to do something right now in Congress that will help small businesses. The Bipartisan Credit Card Competition Act, if passed, will spur competition and curtail this monopoly tax. Passing this bill will very tangibly help independent businesses keep their doors open, pay their employees and their suppliers, and to serve their communities. So on behalf of the 300,000 small businesses in our coalition, we urge Congress to pass the Credit Card Competition Act now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren, and all your leadership on getting us to this point. So to really, really close us out for real this time, Doug Cantor with the National Association of Convenience Stores and representing the Merchant Payments Coalition. Doug?
Thank you, Morgan. And I appreciate everybody joining us and those who are watching the recording afterward as well. This issue is critical for folks on Main Street all around America and for consumers all around America. And I think what you're hearing on this call and what you saw in the letter that Morgan referenced that was signed by multiple groups representing consumers all over the country is that the credit card industry, and especially the way that it's concentrated, mistreats businesses in the same way it mistreats consumers, with new hidden fees, with changes to terms, all of it dictated without warning. And that is something that businesses can't deal with, something that harms consumers every day. And that's why our coalition is also releasing today the results of a poll. We just went out and asked people whether they support this Credit Card Competition Act and reform of these credit card swipe fees or not. 2/3 of Americans support reform here. Only 27% of people oppose it. It is overwhelming numbers that support reforming these swipe fees. And it cuts across all ideologies, all groups, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all above 60% support for reform here. That's because it really hits everyone's bottom line. These fees multiply inflation, they're a percentage of transaction amounts, and they're set centrally in a way that we don't let any other part of the economy do. So it's time for reform. We hope that the Congress will take this up this week or at any rate very soon. And at this point, we would welcome questions if folks have those from any of the folks who just spoke today.
Great. And if anyone has questions after, feel free to follow up. But yeah, I just want to put an extra emphasis on Doug's call for everyone to be in touch with their Congress people, reach out to your senators, and let them know that this is a priority. You know, as a small business owner, as a consumer, as part of the public, we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to inject competition into this market, and the time is now, and we need Congress to vote on the Credit Card Competition Act. So thank you so much. We will continue to be in touch and appreciate everyone's attendance today.
Lynn Merrick, it looks like, just joined us. And
Oh,
unfortunately, we've gone through the program, but maybe we hold for just a moment and see if Lynn has any questions as well before we wrap up.
great. Yeah, sounds good.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. I hate to be here late and I hope it's not repetitive, but does anyone have a good grip on what the strategy going forward on Capitol Hill might be for getting the legislation passed? Like any details you might be able to provide?
So I think this is Doug. I'm happy to jump in here. Most of the folks on this call are local business owners, and I think they probably are all quite thankful they don't have to deal with Washington and the inner workings of legislation day to day. But I think really the only thing in this forum we can say with respect to strategy is we are pressing as fast as we can for a vote. And want this to pass right away. There are fee increases going into effect in just a couple of weeks in October, and Main Street's really had enough. And so, Senators Durbin and Marshall are really the ones who are making those decisions. And I think all our folks are just sort of pleading with them and the rest of the Congress that the sooner the better. We need this voted on, we need it brought up, and need it to pass.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.
Melissa, do you have any specific questions? Okay, great. If not, then, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I'm bouncing between two Zooms right now. I did want to just check to see if anyone can just touch on the way that this argument we've heard about the credit card rewards. Can we just get a little deeper into that? I guess there was some research done after the debit card changes that showed there were banks that stopped offering debit card points after the legislation was passed for that type of card. I'm just wondering if anyone can give any little more assurances that any changes won't affect that stream of funding.
Yeah, so I'd refer you to a couple of things. One is there's a fact-checking service called verifythis.com. We're happy to provide you the fact check they wrote up on this rewards claim. They concluded that the statements that the credit card industry is making about rewards and this reform are false, unequivocally false. There's a payments advisory firm, CMSBI, has done a study of what happens with regulation of card fees around the world. And I would note that these regulations often are capping of the fees, which isn't part of the Credit Card Competition Act at all. And they found that based on worldwide experience, rewards in the United States, if the Credit Card Competition Act became law, would drop by less than 0.1%. So all of the alarmism is completely misplaced. With respect to debit cards, I would also urge you to simply put debit rewards card into Google and see what comes up. There are plenty of them. They're out there. If you want a debit rewards card, you can get one. And there's no evidence whatsoever that this was a widespread practice in 2010 when Dodd-Frank became law and the Durbin Amendment became law. It wasn't. It was a brand new thing to think about rewards on debit cards. So nothing that the credit card industry says about that is actually accurate. Don't take our word for it. Take a look at verify.com and see what they say. It looks like Morgan was way faster than I am and put it in the chat.
Yeah, it's easier when you're talking and then I can look for the link. So yeah, dropped both a link to the Verify site that Doug referenced there, Melissa, and then also to our myth fact that Economic Liberties put out last week with that letter that addresses some of the stats on rewards programs and what the impact would be of Credit Card Competition Act.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Morgan, can I chime in right here with Melissa?
Sure.
You know, why would it be, I mean, why is it proving to be successful for them in Europe, but not in the States? If you look at how much higher it is for us here, any effect they're talking about here, why is it not as effective in Europe and they're able to survive there, but not here with these rewards and everything in between? Melissa, that was addressing your question.
Yes, no, I appreciate it. I'm sorry. I'm listening to two calls right now, so I can't engage in a back and forth. I apologize.
Good. I just wanted to make sure I put that in. Yeah, the 7 times higher is just unworldly, I would say. So all these cries for mercy, I think, are unfounded across the board.
Yeah, and that's referenced in the myth fact where, they're capped at 0.3%. And as a lot of our business owners share today, paying 3-4%, I mean, maybe higher in certain cases on these transactions in the US. Great. Okay, well, I know we're slightly over time, but yeah, Lynn, any other questions maybe to close things out to make sure we stick to everybody's schedule?
No, but thank you for asking.
Okay, great. All right. Well, yeah, thank you again to all of our speakers and business owners and especially, to members of the press who are interested in learning more about this. And let's all cross our fingers that we get a vote and can actually address a lot of the market issues that we've talked about today. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.